Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Independent Podcast. I'm your host, Fernando Garcia, and we are welcoming back a guest from a previous interview, Michael Maxsenti, who is a congressional candidate for District Number 47 here in California. Michael, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Fernando. It's nice to be back
Yes.
in a very different role.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, I want to just, right off the bat, I always like to ask people, what prompted you to, run for Congress? And even before that, what prompted you to even get involved in politics in general? I mean, most people don't do that. Most people sit on the couch, yell at the TV, talk to their friends about it, but you have chosen a different path. You've chosen to be involved and actually put your name on the ballot. What got you to this point?
I'll try to give the Reader's Digest version of it. Back, if people will remember, in 2010, I had been reflecting on the sacrifice that my father had made during World War II and the sacrifices of my friends that went off to Vietnam, many killed, many wounded. But for the grace of God, I was 4 digits away from going myself. Wow. And that was in early 2010. And that, for people, hopefully they'll remember, we were just coming out of what started off in 2007, an economic slowdown, became a recession. And then for many people, it became a real depression. And we were watching our banks be bailed out by our government while millions of Americans were losing their homes. And right on the heels of that, we were then having the lead up to the vote in May of 2010 of the Affordable Care Act. So Michael Moore had come out with his movie Sicko, and there was a lot of disparaging, things going on. And it was like our government's bailing out these banks while millions of Americans are losing their homes. We've got immense resources in our nation, and our government is messing around, not able to come up with a good, workable healthcare system that would help us be healthy. And we were already seeing many signs of the slippage of the American health around us. And it was like, that's what I made a commitment to my then girlfriend, now wife. And I said, I've got to figure out what's going on. I had lived this great life. And I had become a young president of a division of American Standard Corporation at 33. I've been the COO of a joint venture startup for Nissan. I had built a manufacturing plant here in Irvine. I started a publishing business, and I built up the second largest tourism publishing business in Southern California, if not the entire state. And I was living this great life in my beautiful custom home built on top of one of the most prestigious gated streets in Laguna. And I'm going, I've never had to sacrifice anything for this. Yeah. And that's when this was all happening. And I said, I've got to figure out what I can do to contribute to making a future for my children and grandchildren that my father and previous generations had given to us. So that's what was my original motivation. And we had taken my father in out of a nursing home and ended up taking care of him the last 4 years of his life. And when I was going through his papers, his enlistment papers, term of service, duration. When they signed up for World War II, it was for the duration. And so when I started learning about the depths of the corruption behind both the leadership of both political parties, I said, I've got to take my learning and my energy and my skill set and do what I can to contribute and get back. And so that's what I said to Kelly. I'm in this for the duration. Little did I know, 15 years in counting, I'm still in this. And now I'm into the arena. I finally decided to get into the arena, so we can touch on that, I know, coming up.
Yeah. Now, and this is your first time running, actually. Is that correct?
Yeah. And
okay.
I never thought I would ever run for office, public office, even though I had been class president in my high school and even my grammar school. And things like that. But I never thought about running for public office, at least not once I started having children.
Yeah.
But then you had asked why now, and why after 15 years, or just shy of 15, on the outside working to in part of the national reform movement, why I chose to run. After the vote in November, and it held through the night, and many of the volunteers from groups that I know you know of well, from the Common Sense Party, Forward Party, Team Kennedy, then Trump, were asking, what should we do? And I told them, I said, first off, all Trump's victory at this time means is he's been able to puncture the control of the two-party system again. Hopefully that vote would hold, and it did, but it wasn't certified until January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
And I told everybody, just think of it this way. I used the World War II analogy. We just landed on the beaches of Normandy. They still control the cliffs. And even after the U.S. troops and others were able to scale those cliffs, it was a bloody battle for a couple of years on, and there's still Nazis today. I said, you'll never really defeat evil. And I said, I'm going to think about what's the best thing I could do. I had the opportunity to apply for a job with the transition team and go back to the Maha group with Kennedy. I also had an opportunity to go with Peter Navarro and apply there. And I said to both of them, whatever I could do there, many people could do as well or better. I wanted to figure out what was the most important thing I could do.
Yeah.
Coming up from the grassroots, meeting people like yourself, working with these amazing volunteers and people dedicated to trying to help reform our political system. And so after the vote was certified, and I literally prayed on this, Fernando, every morning and thought about it every day. And then I came to the decision that the most important single thing I could do with my learning is to run for Congress. And a lot of people say, why don't you run for state assembly? Why don't you run for state office, et cetera? I don't have that much time. I'm not in this for a career. I'm in this to take my learning and apply it at what I believe is the most crucial time. And that is the 2026 midterms. The only way we're going to be able to see if the policies that Trump is initiating, that Kennedy is initiating, and others will bear fruit for the American people. It's going to take time. These tariffs, it's great that we've got all of these corporations committing billions of dollars to build new manufacturing plants. But by the time they get that approved through their board of directors, find the proper real estate that they want to build on, build a facility, get it into manufacturing, we're talking at least a couple of years or more for that process to start feeling those jobs. And Kennedy and all the changes with Maha that was one of the driving forces for my effort for the last over a year and a half now was in support of Maha, but it's going to take time. All of those companies that have been manufacturing their similar product under the same name in Europe and other countries with a different formulation that's much healthier than ours, even though they have that formulation, and they've now made verbal commitments to change and start processing our ingredients in our food in a similar, healthier manner. Again, they've got millions of dollars in inventory and throughout the country. It's going to take time to now for that to sell off. They've got to change the ingredient formulations for what they're doing for our products, and then get those on the shelves. People start buying it. And again, we're not going to go to Disneyland next year and walk around and say, wow, I can really see a healthier America. It's going to take, it's probably going to take at least 3 to 5, 6 years before we can really feel and see in people's lives the benefits of a healthier America, see the benefits of more jobs, see the other changes that are in works. So the 2026 midterms are crucial, that we can hold and hopefully expand the control over the House and the Senate so that we can make sure that these new laws and executive orders and changes in the deep state and others have a chance to come to fruition, and for people to see in their lives the benefit of those things. So that's why I decided, you know what, I'm no spring chicken, and I'm at the end of my career from a business productive standpoint.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's the most important thing I can do.
Yeah.
I'm all in.
Nice. Well, you still got you still got a lot left in you. So I'm looking forward to hear, well, and tell me a little bit about District 47 and the people that you plan to represent. What does that encompass? If I didn't know, where you lived and somebody told me District 57, how would you describe that area?
District 47 encompasses, it was redistricted in 2020. It now encompasses all of Irvine, Laguna Beach, Newport Beach, Costa Mesa, Huntington Beach, and the ocean half of Seal Beach.
Okay.
So it's all the districts are relatively the same in total population. It's a very concentrated district, but it encompasses those districts or those cities, of which there's an amazing diversity within those communities. But It's a unique district because only as of literally a month ago, the latest Register of Voters, which I'll refer to for those in the audience, ROVs, numbers came out. And right now there's a 4,300 voter advantage to the Republicans for the first time in a number of years. It's almost as dead even of a split as you could imagine, of 35% Republicans, Democrats, and then 30% others. And that other is made up of 24 of that 30% is made up of mostly is no party preference, as we refer to in California as NPPs. And that has been one of the biggest reasons that the Democrats have been able to take this seat and hold it now for 4 consecutive elections. Katie Porter held it for 3 terms. Then when she went to the Senate, another career politician, Dave Min, who I'm sure will be running and will be the main opponent, obviously. He was a typical career politician, came up from Wharton and University of Pennsylvania and Harvard. Then he went to Washington after graduation and worked as an advisory on a team for Chuck Schumer. Then they came back out here to California, got him an associate professor's degree position at UCI with benefits for housing. And then he ran, when Katie Porter decided to run for Congress, he was immediately plugged in to run for her seat in the state Senate, of which he won with tremendous money and benefits from the Democratic Party. As soon as Katie Porter exited that seat to run for the state or for the U.S. Senate, he then was moved over. So, but the good news, bad news, he spent 4 years in the state Senate here in California, where he was a rubber stamp for all the policies of the Democratic machine here in the state, as well as for Governor Newsom. And now that he's back in Washington, he's continuing with that same path.
Wow. And what are, I'm going to kind of hit on a couple of issues. Obviously, what do you think on a federal level we need to make change on that can really have an effect here in California, maybe even your district specific?
There's a number of things, and our overriding theme, the actual final wording, we're still working on and disagreeing about, but the basic theme that is most important that I recognize and live in is making an economy that works for the people, making it affordable for people to live here in California. My son was out of state for many years. My daughter and grandkids moved out of the state a number of years ago. Most of my friends, even those of means, know that their kids, for the most of them, to be able to afford a reasonable house to buy or even rent is almost out of reach for almost everybody. Yeah. And then you add on to that inflation and all these things. So there's a number of very specific things that can be done at the federal level to help. And one of the most important things is just the budget restraints of the government, which has driven up the interest rates by our spending. And that affects everybody with the interest rates the way they are. And that drives up the cost for businesses to expand, the cost of housing to get a loan. That affects when builders build homes for rent or buy, those costs go up. So it drives up the cost and drives inflation. And so budgeting is one of the most important things that can be done, because Washington is really spending away our future. So some of the other things they can do, zero-based budgeting. Every program must prove its worth every year. Just like when I was in business, I didn't approve somebody's new budget until they had demonstrated what they had done with the last budget. So it's called zero-based budgeting, because the more the government spends, that means the more it needs to take in taxes. And that drives up, takes more out of our pocket, and they take it out of businesses. They take it out of our income tax. And then we need a balanced budget amendment. It's been proposed for years, but that needs to be furthered. There's, I think, 39 states that now, or it meets, and it's got like 26, 27 that have already agreed to this amendment. So that is something that can be done. A debt to GDP cap, that's one of the most important things, so that we can set a maximum ratio of limits to prevent further economic decline. And then end the inflationary spending, require impact reviews on everything before they spend it in a bill. And lastly, and within Congress, one of the most important things they could do is simply no budget, no pay. If Congress fails to pass a budget, they forfeit their salaries, and it's not retroactive. It's not like, oh, okay, you passed it 2 months late, and you get to do it. So those are a few of the things at the federal level that can really help reduce the burden on everyday living here.
Now, when it comes, so inflation, sounds like taxes, those are things that would help the everyday person. When it comes to things like energy, what are your thoughts on energy here in America and the way to go about it? I mean, how would you tackle that? What's your stance on energy here?
Energy is tricky. We obviously need much more energy as we become so much more powered by electricity. So it needs to be smart and efficient, and it needs to be environmentally sensitive. And so we need to look at all forms, everything from solar to wind to sustainables like that. But also we have new modern technology in atomic energy that can be looked at. There's lots of research being done on going to outer space with ability to gather energy there and transmit it back to the planet. So it needs to be smart and efficient and environmentally sensitive. And right now, we've had so many special interest groups over so long telling us about only one way to do it. And as much as we'd all like to have totally clean energy, sustainable, you can't transition from where we've been, where the dependence for the most part has been on fossil fuels, and expect to immediately transition as fast as the state's trying to force it on us. We don't have a grid, a power grid, to be able to do that. People see it in California all the time when we have power outages. People waiting for long times to get their car charged. So it's got to be much more holistic approach to these problems. And unfortunately, our Congress has not been doing their job at all to engage with real holistic dialogue to bring in people and the constituents into meaningful dialogue to really figure out and have a real energy plan. And that's something we absolutely have to do.
And how about, there's a lot of talk with foreign affairs, issues like Ukraine and Israel. And obviously as a congressman, you're going to be asked, where do you side in terms of, if if we're going to be sending money, the president has a certain amount of freedom to where he can delegate, but when it comes to Congress allotting money or supporting different ideas, where do you think we get it right in terms of our foreign affairs, and where do you think we're getting it wrong right now?
Well, the first thing where we get wrong is I'm totally opposed to wars unless they're in self-defense and affect us directly. And killing anywhere, I'm totally against that. Here's where we're doing it right now. What Trump's policies are modeled right after Ronald Reagan's policies, that how we were able to collapse from within the Soviet Union without that dreaded World War III that everybody thought was inevitable. It was a combination of publicly, very demonstratively demonstrating peace through strength. They came out with this shield. They were going to do this technological shield for nuclear bombs and missiles. They accelerated the defense spending budgets dramatically. And they, at the same time, put very stringent restrictions on trade globally, on economic trade with Russia. So Russia, to respond, was forced to accelerate their spending on military. At the same time, they were being cut off from their ability to raise more money through selling oil and other products throughout the world. So they were being put into a real squeeze that then helped motivate the Russian people from within to rise up and collapse the Soviet Union without relatively any guns being fired. And that is the exact same policy that President Trump announced in his first term and began with Iran. And then as soon as Biden came in, they totally took away all of those economic constraints and totally changed this policy of peace through strength. And what Trump has come back to do is something that's essential, is to help the people of Iran overthrow a regime that has taken hold there and now controlled that country for 45 plus years. And it's a 2,500 plus, it's a thousands and thousand year old beautiful culture with a lot of amazing, wonderful people. And they are being so brutally oppressed. But what we can do is what Trump is doing: cut them off economically. I'm glad he was able to, if he was going to use the military, to focus on the one thing, which was those nuclear reactors, but have total restraint in terms of use of our military or anyone else's military. But at the same token, as much as we don't like to hear it, as much as we're against it when it comes to the budget, accelerate the spending to make sure we're modernized, because that is as much show as anything else. But we do need to modernize. So peace through strength and total restraint when it comes to war, and using the policies that have proven successful, because Iran is the linchpin to the problems in the Middle East. And if we can help the people of Iran, the good people of Iran, to rise up from within and collapse their government without a significant loss of life on their part or on anyone's part, that's the approach we should take. And I totally support what Trump is doing there. When it comes to the issue with Russia and Ukraine, that's a very different one. And I'm a little bit puzzled by the expenditures there, but I have to have belief that Trump's approach to Russia, I know, is similar to what he's done with Iran. And so if they feel the need for the short term to help in some way with the military increase in spending, I sit back and just say, I hope and pray that it works, that we can help bring that war to an end and save as many lives and bring peace to that region.
Now, let me ask you a question. There's a lot of people who would say, on one hand, you're talking about saving money and the effects of spending and how that affects inflation and the cost of living. But on the other hand, we're spending all this money on defense. How do you marry those two?
I'm really glad you asked that question, because most people don't ask that follow-up question. And it's a really important question. And that's where one of the things about Trump's policies, his policies in general, I support strongly. The execution of many of those are lacking, to say the least. Some of them are abysmal. But that can't be all laid at his feet, because you've got so many different people there that are benefiting from the status quo. They want to try to embarrass Trump, and there's a lot of reasons for the lack of execution on some of these policies. But specifically, to answer your question, we need to dramatically look at how our government runs and operates. It is an incredibly bloated, inefficient system. The little bit of Doge at the beginning exposed some of the incredible waste and inefficiencies that have been going on for long times to fund special interests throughout the world. And people forget, every one of those dollars either comes out of American taxpayer dollars, or it's dollars that our government prints that drives up inflation, which is the worst thing, because then it dramatically reduces everybody's spending worth and drops their net worths. Inflation is a silent killer. And so it either is a combination of both. We're forcing the government to spend inflationary dollars and tax us and keep those dollars up. So we need to really modernize our government. And that's where, when I went back to those budgets, and no department, and this is where Congress has done an abysmal job in not doing their duty to be the overseers of all of those departments. They're supposed to have stewardship over all that. And you can tell by what little bit Doge was able to expose the dramatic lack of oversight that was given by Congress. And they need to get their butts kicked. And that's one of the things I will hope to do. And by the way, I'm not naive enough to think I alone, as a rookie going into Congress, can make all of these things that we're talking about alone. But I'm not alone. There are a number of groups nationally working to elect 5 at a minimum, 25 or more, people like myself who will go to Congress and represent, first and foremost, the people and the Constitution. And they'll always put the Constitution of people ahead of the self-interest of a political party. I'm a Republican, and I rejoined the Republican Party to do that. But the only way I was willing to do that was because of the new commitment to a big tent Republican Party, a populist big tent Republican Party that Kennedy and Trump came together and have committed to. And that's the reason I was willing to say, I can go help rebuild this Republican Party from a populist movement and a common sense perspective, and be one of many to go there to help flush out those old guard career politicians who benefited from the status quo for themselves and their families.
Yeah. You know, there's a congressman, I think he's out. I could be getting his name wrong, but from, I believe, Kentucky, Thomas Massey, I think his name.
Yeah.
So, you know, he talks a lot about how a lot of these big bills get passed, and you know, they kind of package it all in and kind of push it through, as opposed to, you know, more of like a single issue that we should attack. Are you in favor of something like that, of that approach, where we can take kind of one issue, let's talk about it, maybe on a bipartisan basis, especially with some of these issues, and then move
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Those bills and these omnibus bills and the way they've written the rules now is such that every single bill goes through and they purposefully put in contradictory items.
Right.
And in the leadership of the party, which is directed by the money from the special interests almost always, or the self-interest of the party leadership, just plain and simple, they will put poison pills into a bill so that if you don't vote the way they tell you to vote, and they want to primary you out, they will spend money through the PACs and through other means to use that issue that you voted against
Right.
one that people always like to think of is you voted against the raises for the military. You voted
Right.
against, something that everybody wants to see fixed.
Right.
How could you do that? You voted against it. Well, the other 10 items in that bill were extremely, favorable that you might have wanted, but there's a couple things in there that you were abhorrent about. One of the best solutions, and this is something that could be done, is to make every bill, and Thomas Massey's one of a number, and I'm going to go there and be one of many, to put forth a change in the rules so that a bill comes forward with only one item, one issue. That way, everyone is held accountable, yes or no, on these issues.
Yeah.
Not mush them together where you're forced to allow very abhorrent things get passed just because you can't let them use that against you, so that you could get some good things passed. And that is a relatively simple change that they will fight tooth and nail, but can be done, needs to be done, and will be done with enough people elected into the House like myself that will help force this issue. Single item bills, period.
Now, we've talked about this before. And a lot of things that fuels what we just talked about is money in politics, and how the big money in politics, they're the ones who push that process. What are your thoughts about money in politics and how it affects, our democracy? And what are your solutions, or how do you feel about that?
Well, just follow the money. That's been said for years. Big
Yeah.
money does control Washington. And that's one of the 8 policy issues that I have up on the website. I've got 4 immediate impact and 4 longer term. And one of them is that big money controls Washington. There's a number of simple things that could be done. There could be a no Congressional Insiders Trading Act that now allows themselves and their families to profit off of the laws that they write and the companies and industries that they oversee. There's been a number of laws recently passed that think and say they're going to make some changes, but the way they're written, they already know how to get around them, and they have not been effective at all. There's even a great group, and I don't remember the exact name. They're actually headquartered here in Irvine. I plan on looking them up. That has I think they call it Invest Like Pelosi.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
They track her literally. They have the ability to track her investments and get it out through their website almost instantaneous, so that people can invest because they have this inside information that they use for their benefit. They could also pass a lifetime Congressional Integrity Act, which would keep the revolving door to the lobbyists and shut that door, which would require people not to become lobbyists. But something that doesn't get talked about when money in Congress that could really help as well, and that is if they actually paid Congress people a wage, a salary that was tied more directly to results, and would make it so that they don't have to feel like at the salary level they're being paid, they've sacrificed a tremendous amount of their life and time. And now when they leave office, the way it's set up where they've got the retirement is that you have to be in a career politician for 20 years just to get full retirement benefits. If you're only in there for like 4 or 5 years, 1 or 2, 3 terms, you're going to get 10% of your salary.
Right.
So you've just walked away from a good paying job, sacrificed immensely your life to do this. And now you're faced with, okay, now when I get burned out, or now when I need to move on with my life, you're faced with having to go back out into the industry and start all over again.
Yeah.
Now, that's why we have these revolving doors where they go right into being lobbyists, and that just fuels the corruption. So there's a lot of things that could be done there that would change that. And just one last thing I would mention is they could stop the Congressional Profiteering Act, which would make secret stock trades and all those things illegal, and then make a total Congressional Accountability Act that they could impose laws on them. So there's lots of things that need to be done, can be done, and will be done when we can get enough people elected into office who are there not for their career advancement, not thinking for the long term of a career, but truly are there committed to the people, to the Constitution first and primary.
Yeah. You know, one of the hottest items that's being talked about right now, especially in California, is the issue of immigration, and you know, Trump's kind of approach to it, and you know, some of the ICE raids that are going on. What are your thoughts on how we're approaching it, and should we do anything different?
It's a really sensitive subject, and justifiably so.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, the overall lack of immigration policy over the last many, many years. In 1986 or 88, President Reagan signed into law with Tip O'Neill a comprehensive immigration reform bill that never got implemented. So, and I know people, and I think most people who've grown up in California, I have friends who've been here for 20, 30 years who came here illegally. And they've also applied for 20 or 30 years trying to get their legal status. They've raised their families here. They've got children who fought off in our wars. They've been good citizens paying taxes. They've enormously enhanced our culture. And the fact that over the last 4 years in particular, but it started about 10 years ago or even more, they started opening up these floodgates, particularly the last 4 years, flooding our country with immigrants who, many of them are criminals. How many, we don't know, because we don't have the ability to track them, which is totally wrong. So first and foremost, there's a couple things we need to do. I believe in a simple little phrase. We need to have wide gates and a giant high wall. We may need to make it so that we know and can process everybody who comes into this country to know if they're the type of citizen that we want to allow in. Secondly, we need to have a process that for those people who truly are good people who are looking for it, we need to be able to process them efficiently into the country. And those people who've been here for so long, who came here illegally, who skirted the laws, they need to have a pathway to citizenship. And there was just recently proposed bill in the legislation, I think just this last week, that I read through that sounded like a reasonable way to do that. So the way these policies were sold to us and the American people support, get rid of the criminals first. The problem is we don't know a lot of it. Who are the criminals? And many people will say, well, anybody who came here illegally is a criminal. Yes, that's true. But we're supposed to set an example for humanity, for our culture, for compassion. That's what our country was one of the principles founded on. And we know historically we've strayed far away from that many times. But here's an opportunity to demonstrate a compassionate policy. And if we make a mistake, and there's many examples that are being thrown out and around, when a mistake is made, it needs to be owned up to, you know, not ignored or just said, well, they were here illegally or they ran, you know, to have people coming at them in full armor with weapons drawn to a guy that's working in construction or working in a maintenance company or whatever scares the shit out of people, and it's wrong. So there's got to be a well thought out approach to this. We need to do it quickly. And one last thing I want to add about this that people aren't aware of, that what the amount of immigration, what it's done to suppress wages. And that's what, go back to Cesar Chavez and the Farm Workers Union. They were adamant about illegal immigrants because they knew the impact of too many illegal immigrants into the country that drove down the wages and for everybody. And so this flood of immigration over the last few years has dramatically hurt the vast majority of Americans by driving down wages. And in this program where they bring in foreign workers, these big corporations say, oh, well, we can't find enough good engineers to fill these high-paying jobs. So what they do is they go out under a visa program find people from all over the world, many of which were educated in our own schools here, and they'll pay them much less than what they would have to pay an American to do that job. And so they'll go out and bring in these people from foreign countries who are like a form of indentured servant, that they'll come here from these other countries and work for significantly lower wages and then go home. And that's taking a good job away from an American, a person who's here. And that's another way that the corporations and companies, it doesn't have to be big corporations, small corporations and companies have done it too, that they've taken advantage of this flood of immigration. They looked the other way for the illegal immigrants for the last many years because they were benefiting from lowering wages. And unfortunately, if you were an illegal immigrant, you could be really abused. You were treated and oftentimes like a slave because they knew you could not go to the police. You could not go turn them in because if you did, you would be deported. So they held that over these people like slave owners.
Yeah.
So
now, are you somebody, I know that you're in line with many of Trump's, ideas and policies, but are you also somebody you feel like can speak up or stand up against, or are you willing to do that if you disagree with any of his policies or laws?
Well, Fernando, I think you know me as we know each other, and for the audience, in full disclosure, Fernando and I met as I was working in the political reform effort as Fernando was. That's how we met.
Yep.
And that's the one thing is that, that's one of the advantages of being there at my age, not going there for a career. I'm not going there to play along, to get along. I'm going there to be a disruptor on behalf of the American people and the Constitution. And yes, those policies in principle that Trump is supporting, I will support 100%, but I'm also going to make sure that they adhere to the Constitution. And those responsible for implementing those policies do it in a very responsible way. And one of the things that I'm a real big proponent of, to make sure that policies are written in a way that can be implemented efficiently and successfully, is a process called citizens assembly. Over 120 nations in the world already have different forms of citizens assemblies. And for those in the audience, let me give you just a brief description of a citizens assembly. And these could be done from your local government all the way up to the federal level, varying forms. But in essence, what a citizens assembly is a randomly chosen group. Think of it like the way oftentimes our juries are selected, but it's the opposite. Juries are selected and then weeded out based upon preferences. As citizens assembly, you're offered a stipend depending on if it's going to be a project that might take a weekend. You're not going to get paid anything but minimal cost, but it might be a project that they're asking people to devote a couple of months to.
Yeah.
You pay them appropriately. You get people of diverse perspectives, life perspectives, not just based on checking boxes on the surface. Like, gee, Fernando, your skin's darker than mine, and your name's Garcia, and mine's Maxsenti, despite the fact that I'm an eighth Hispanic.
Yeah.
but I look like an old, a white guy, and you look like a Mexican or Hispanic guy. Somebody else looks black. But real, true life diversity experiences, so that then the experts come in, work with them, educate them, present to them like they would present to Congress, but present to the citizens, and let the citizens, a diverse group of citizens, work together to come up with a policy recommendation that they can get a supermajority on, that then goes to their, whatever it's the city council or all the way to Congress or anywhere in between, with their recommendations and why. And then it's up to the Congress or the city council or whatever to then either adopt as written or come back to the citizens groups with why you changed it or differed with it, or throw it back to them with new information that they might not have thought through the long-term consequences to the degree somebody else has brought forward. But citizens assemblies will make the people's voices an integral part of the process of legislation, so that we don't have legislation written with such drastic unintended consequences by so many groups. And we need effective solutions that the vast majority of people can get behind. and they're possible, and there's direct ways to do it.
Yeah, I love the idea of citizen assemblies. Bringing
Great.
people together is it's a great way to do that. I'm going to ask one last question.
I hope it didn't talk too long on the answers. I have
this
to
is you probably touched on it a little bit, but what does it mean to you to be an American?
It means I was one. Go ahead.
What binds us as Americans as well? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. Well, that's two questions.
Yeah.
What does it mean for me to be an American? Is I feel like I was born at the sweet spot in American history. I was, without going into a lot of detail, but I was born in the South Bay, and had a great opportunity to go to college. Went to San Diego State. I've had a great life, great opportunities, and I was given those because of the immense sacrifices going back to the founders and the people who fought for the revolution and the sacrifices made throughout. So to me, I'm very grateful to be an American, that I was born here at an opportune time. I've seen that eroded dramatically, and that's why I'm here and why I'm committed to do this. What does it feel, I think, that binds us together? I think the word would come from freedom. Freedom is what is underneath the driving force behind the creativity that has spawned so much evolutionary, revolutionary in advancements technologically and in many other ways. We used to really lead the world with example, even though you've got to go, if you go back into our history, remember that history was written by the victors. So a lot of the stories, like I'm an 8th Cherokee Indian as well. And I know, I've only recently brought that up, that I know those ancestors, it's never been great for them. And I'm an 8th Spaniard who came through Mexico and migrated up. And I guarantee many of my ancestors on that side of my family would say, for many of them, it's never been great. So I look at MAGA from the day it came out, and when Trump came down and announced it, that it should be Make America Great for All, not again. For all should be the focus. What binds us is that freedom to create, the idealism that we can be free to explore life for each one of us. And we were given an opportunity here with relatively little oppression for most. And now our goal should be to raise up that level of freedom for all, and really try to move back. Part of the campaign message I try to bring is to help us move back. Our founding fathers didn't create the perfect union, but they created a path towards a perfect union. And part of my main impetus is to help us get back on that path towards that more perfect union together, because together is at the essence of it. And I'd like to add one last thing in closing. People often will look at somebody of my age and a lot of the younger people. And I remember when I was young and I'd say, never trust anybody over 30. Well, I'm well beyond that. But the founding of our country, people don't remember or know, because American history is so poorly taught. Hamilton, that is the rage for so many, he was 21 when he signed the Declaration of Independence.
It's crazy.
Madison was 25. Jefferson was 33, I think, or 35. Yeah. Washington was 44. But you know what? Benjamin Franklin was 70 when he signed the Declaration of Independence and 81 when he signed the Constitution. It's the unique blending of the vision, the idealism, the energy of the youth with the world lived experiences and hopeful wisdom from the elders brought together. That's when we get great solutions. The Indians, who had great influence on the founding fathers, the Iroquois nation, which lasted, according to most ecological or records show, somewhere around 500 years. It had like 400 tribes, but they survived over that because of the blending of, and most of the time it was often the women the elder women and the chiefs with the youth. There's a blending of that. And that's what we need today, is not to throw out the old or engage only the young. We need to bring ourselves together and use the best of that, the best of the idealism, the best of the lived world experiences coming together, working together to get us back on that path to that more perfect union.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure. How could somebody who's interested in helping your campaign, how can they reach out to you? I'm gonna leave all your information in the comments or in the summary. But tell me a little bit of what's your website? Is it it's Maxsenti for Congress, correct?
Yeah, Maxsentiforcongress.com. And I'd like to say to people, even if you're not in my district, I implore you to please help me. I'm not in a position to be a self-funder, and I need all the help to get the attention of the media and the credibility for our campaign. Even though you can't vote for me, every vote and everything I do is on behalf of you. So keep that in mind. Second is, if you can only donate right now $5 or $25, go to my website if you would. Pay that. And one note, when you sign into my website or make a donation to our campaign, it's in our own servers. We just went over Monday we started transition to our own servers. We're not affiliated with or part of any national group. We're not selling anybody's information to anybody. It'll be kept in our campaign database solely. But that way you'll be able to keep up with the campaign, because we will be starting and executing a email program and lots of ways to reach you. But if you don't have the resources, that's fine. Give what you can. You may have contacts. You may have special skills. You may have time. All are of equal value. So anything that you can contribute to helping us get America back on a path towards that more perfect union, trust me and know that I will go there with one purpose, and that's to represent Americans and move us towards that path.
Awesome. Michael, thank you so much for joining me and being a part of this podcast. It's been a pleasure calling you a friend, and I wish you the best. And I was happy to hear.
It's mutual, Fernando. You've gone through what I'm going through, and it is far more daunting and intimidating and challenging than I even imagined. But I'm not going to quit, and I'm in this to the end.
Awesome. Well, like always, it's always a pleasure. And everybody out there, please check out his website. If you can help him out, great. Mike, I couldn't speak higher high enough about you. And I wish you the best. And thank you for putting your name on the ballot. And, everybody check him out. And thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you again.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Good night.